Hi, everybody. I am Kathy from Moraine Native Plant Community. Thank you for watching this video, and I am joined by Lexi. Hello, Lexi. Glad to see you.
Glad to see you too, Kathy. Hey, everyone. We're excited to be back.
And we're going to be talking about a subject that is, well, for lack of a better word, near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. Native plants that are more deer resistant. I know a lot of you out there really struggle with deer in your gardens and in your landscape, and so we're going to do a deep dive into this whole issue of deer eating your native plants. So the name of our presentation tonight is Deer Resistant Native Plants for Urban Landscapes. And keep in mind when we're doing this, and we'll be mentioning this periodically, there really is no plant that is deer proof. There are some plants that are not favored by deer. So if you have a normal deer population and you have other plants around in open lands near you, they're not going to prefer these plants. But a very hungry deer that is starving will eat pretty much anything. But these plants we're going to be talking about tonight are certainly not their favorites. These are what they're going to eat if there is nothing better around. I don't have any firsthand knowledge that I know I always butt in with in my yard this or in my yard that. I can't do that tonight because where I live, I don't have any deer issues. I've seen deer nearby, but they don't visit my yard. They don't visit my landscape. Do you have any deer by you, Lexi?
I'm by kind of a busy road, so I've only seen deer once or twice, but there's lots of subdivisions around me that are named deer, and I'm sure that they have huge deer populations. So if you're fenced in, that's really going to protect your yard from them coming in. But we get all kinds of questions from people about deer resistance. So that's why we really wanted to do this video. And we're going to talk about some things that they like that are not native and some things that, that will resist and will stay in your garden growing, these native plants that will look beautiful and that they're not going to want to eat.
So, what we'd love for everybody to do is, as we're talking about these plants and just in general, really let's try to help and learn from each other. We're going over some of the ones that are known to be less favored by deer, but please share with everybody in the chat. If you do have a tendency to have a lot of deer in your area, what of these plants have worked for you? Or are there other species of native plants that you have found are more resistant to deer? Please, please share some of your insight if you have more experience with this than we do, because like we said, we're going by known and other people's experiences. These are not our experiences at all because we don't have deer. But some of the plants we're going to be talking about that are known to be more deer resistant native plants are little bluestem. And some of these you might have seen in other presentations we've given, so some of these are repeats as, we do, talks about drought tolerant or loved by butterflies. I mean, there's going to be some duplication, but these are the ones that are more deer resistant. Switchgrass, butterfly weed, cinnamon fern, slender mountain mint, purple coneflower, rose milkweed, black-eyed Susan, wild bergamot, wild columbine, maidenhair fern, New England aster, nodding onion, lavender hyssop, and threadleaf coreopsis. And I'm going to turn it over to Lexi now for a minute, but I will just ask, please, if you like our content, like this video and please subscribe to our channel so you will get notification of new live streams and new videos that we make.
So why do there seem to be so many deer? Well, really, we've come into their territory. We want to have these homes that are surrounded by woods and they're very, beautiful and serene. But this was their habitat, and we've kind of taken it away. So massive urban and suburban sprawl has brought humans into deer territory. We've also removed their predators, which would be wolves and cougars. Even eagles and owls can go after the smaller deer, may prey on the fawns. So if we don't have anything to check, the deer population is just going to grow and grow. We're located by a lot of forest reserves, so we definitely see a lot of deer still. But there are some people that we know in our area that they have deer visitors to their gardens. It's a daily occurrence. So do deer prefer native plants? Well, mostly yes, because they co-evolve together. They prefer many native plants over non-native ornamental and invasive species. So let's just talk for a moment about what they do like to eat. They like to eat woody plants and shrubs. They like to eat maple, oak, sumac, sassafras, dogwood, serviceberry, which is a beautiful little tree. They also like some non-native plants. So they like hostas, they like daylilies, impatiens, tulips, azaleas, and roses. And then they love fruits and nuts, apples, pears, cherries, blackberries, and acorns. And then agricultural crops, so corn, soybeans, alfalfa, wheat, and clover, which rabbits love the clover too. And out of the native plants, some of the ones that they would like to eat or they would prefer would be trillium, so it's a beautiful spring flower, phlox, which is also a favorite of our rabbits too, wild ginger, and mayapple. So really they're adapting their diet based on what's available. So that's where, at the top of this presentation, Kathy's saying, they're going to eat whatever they can find if they're starving. That's really what it comes down to. But those are some of the things that they would prefer to eat. And the native plants that we're going to look at this evening are the ones that they will generally avoid. So we'll take a look at all of those beautiful plants that also have other ecosystem benefits.
And I just want to mention, there's been some research also done that even though they do, deer, most research has shown deer do have a tendency to prefer native species, which just makes sense because deer are native and they co-evolved with these plants, and so they prefer a lot of the native species, just like our bees do, just like our butterflies do, just like our birds do. But there's also been research that shows that a lot of our native plants, because they co-evolved with deer and other herbivores, native herbivores in this area, are more resistant. They can withstand some of the damage done by herbivores because of their growth habit or their way of seeding or their way of propagating. So basically, a lot of our native plants can tolerate some foraging and from herbivores without the plant being killed or with the plant still being able to do some reproduction, because it's really all about the reproduction. So they both kind of acclimated to each other, right?
That's right. And are there any native plants that are truly deer resistant? Yes and no. So no native plant is completely immune to the deer foraging, but these ones that we're going to go over tonight are definitely less favored by the deer. Aren't they beautiful? Look at them.
They really are. I mean, they really are just like so statuesque.
Yeah.
So there are some plant characteristics that make a plant species less appealing to deer. So one is they often avoid plants that have a strong aroma, such as your herbs, your mints, and other plants with very fragrant flowers or foliage. They don't like prickly leaves, and they usually avoid, browsing on those, as they also avoid plants with thick or leathery leaves. Deer do not like plants with leaves that have stiff hairs, so you can see the texture is a big deal to them. And they also don't like plants that have a strong, bitter taste. That makes the plants unappealing. We're not telling everybody to go around and taste your plants, though, to see if they have a strong, bitter taste.
No, just take our word for it. And this is really interesting, but as a general rule, grasses and sedges are not favored by deer. And you'd think that, grasses and sedges, oh, that would be so easy to eat. But there must be something about the taste of these plants, our native grasses and sedges, that they don't actually like.
Or the texture or something.
Something about it. Yep, they do like flowers. They like a lot of flowers.
So here's our first plant tonight. Speaking of grasses, one plant that is not favored by little bluestem. That's the Latin name. I'm not going to say it. I'm not daring enough tonight. Little bluestem, gorgeous, small native grass with a beautiful blue color. Just really pops and it is such a great accent to so many other native plants in the landscape. This likes full to part sun, medium to dry soil. It gets up to 3 feet tall, blooms July through October. Great fall color. I love the way little bluestem looks in the fall with the red color. It spreads very well by seeds, and it is tolerant of poor soils. This is a really rugged plant. There's not too many places that it won't do well, other than you probably wouldn't want to put this in a very wet area. It's not going to like that. And it also doesn't establish itself well if it has some very tall, robust competition against it. So you want to plant it with plants that are the same height as it or shorter, and that's when it will do its best. And it is hardy in zones 3 to 9 and native to most of the US and Canada, as we'll see here in our BONAP map. And little bluestem and some of our other grasses are just such important ecosystem plants. They provide so much food for, I mean, they're host plants for many butterflies and moths, but they provide so much food and habitat for our birds and other wildlife that they're just really a very important member of our ecosystem. And here's an example of some of the species that little bluestem is a host plant for. We have a lot of the cute little skipper families that are a type of butterfly, but they almost look like a cross between a butterfly and a moth, but they are out in the daytime. So the Otto skipper, the Delaware skipper, the dusty skipper, the crossline skipper, the swarthy skipper, I always laugh at that name, and the cobweb skipper. So all these guys depend on little bluestem in order to be able to reproduce.
I wish the skippers were easier to identify out in your garden, but they move so fast. It's like, no, I'm just.
That was such a
happy
good name for them. That was such good,
Yeah.
the way they skip around and move so fast. You have a very hard time getting a good look at them.
And it's very rare to see them with their wings open. You're going to see them land
That's true.
with their wings closed. So anyways, something to work on studying what they are. This one is such a classic plant, and it's just beautiful. You really cannot go wrong with switchgrass. It also is very tolerant of a lot of different soil conditions. So it does like full sun. Most of the grasses do, but dry to medium to even to moist soil, it'll do fine. I've got it growing in clay soil. It's totally happy. Gets 3 to 6 feet tall, and it's blooming August through September. But then it dies back and it just kind of goes brown in the fall. Those brown grass fronds will stay throughout the winter, and they just kind of disappear once it gets to the spring. But it's really cool to have that textural interest in your garden during the winter. So this is actually hardy in zones 3 to 9, but it is native to most of the US and Canada, just like our little bluestem is. So here you can see it's got a huge native range. It's just really the West Coast that it's not really native to. And again, it is a very important plant for our skippers. So here's Delaware was also on the little bluestem, but our Argos has a different one, and that is, this is its larval host plant.
All right, next up is butterfly weeds. So Asclepias tuberosa, this is one of our milkweeds that is so important for our suffering monarch butterflies as we try to help them out. And, Lexi and I were just talking before we came on how we've seen so few monarch butterflies this year. They really seem to have taken another hit again this winter. So, this is a great plant to try to, that is not favored by deer, but it's also a great plant to help our monarchs out. But it likes full sun, medium to dry soil. I have the best luck with this plant in the driest, sunniest, hottest places. That's where it just really seems to thrive. Gets to be 2 feet tall, beautiful mounded plant that is really suitable for anywhere, even in the front yard in a formal landscaping. This plant will just shine with that cheerful orange color. Again, it's an important milkweed species for monarchs and other butterflies. They love it. It's clump forming. Again, great growth habit for any landscaping. Hardy in zones 3 to 9 and native to eastern and the central US, as well as eastern Canada. Trying to help our friends up in Canada. So here is the range, and it is the host plant for the monarch butterfly, of course, and it is also the host plant for the queen butterfly, who is similarly colored, but we don't think too much of her. We think mostly of the monarch, but the queen is out there needing this plant as well.
Just beautiful. So we've got a really interesting fern to talk about tonight. This is called cinnamon fern. I'm not going to say that name either, but it gets its name from the brown fruiting spikes. And if you look at this picture here, they do look like cinnamon sticks. And so this one gets 3 to 4 feet tall, full sun to part shade. So it's, most ferns do like a little bit of shade. Medium to wet soil. This would be a great little woodland plant. And it blooms June, July, and August. It's hardy in zones 3 to 9. And this is native to the eastern US. And this is a fern that the deer are not going to be too fond of eating. And here you can see our map. So we've got most of the eastern United States, and just kind of stops right there in the middle of the country.
It sure does.
Yeah.
Whatever that border is, it's like not going beyond this point.
Nope.
Okay, Slender mountain mint. So we talked about this one as well when we were talking about rabbit-resistant plants. And again, we said that some of the features that deer don't like about, with plants is ones that are very fragrant. And this is in the mint family, so you will get a mint scent off of it if you rub the plant and between your fingers the foliage. So it is a native mint. It grows to be 2 feet tall, and it likes full to part sun. Medium wet to medium dry soil, so very adaptable in its site conditions. Blooms June through September. Loved by pollinators and birds. I can really attest to that. I have mountain mint in my garden, and it is just smothered with pollinators this year. And so many different species and so many different little bees and unusual flies and so many different things. It really, really attracts, and creates a tremendous amount of biodiversity in the garden. It's hardy in zones 4 to 9. It is a shorter species of mountain mint. There is another species that is a little bit taller, but this is the shorter one. It's native to the Midwest, eastern, and central US. There we go. I'm not going to even try to pronounce that one either.
Nope.
Some days you're just more daring than others.
That's true. Well, no native garden, and at least in our area, is complete without purple coneflower. So what a beautiful plant. And I think just even with all the ones that we've looked at so far, you can have a really beautiful, diverse garden that isn't going to be grazed by deer. All of these have really unique features, and you can find great places for any of them, or combine them together. So Echinacea purpurea, that one's easy to say, but this is a huge hot spot for our pollinators. You'll always see something on your purple coneflowers, butterflies, bees, hummingbirds, and then later on when the seed heads dry out, you'll get finches and other birds visiting. So it looks great in any garden, grows to 4 feet tall. Mine have even gotten taller than that. It really depends. If they're happy, they're going to get taller. Blooms July through September, so you've got all of this color for many, many months. And it's super easy to grow. It is drought tolerant as well. and it's hardy in zones 4 to 8 and native to parts of the central U.S. So this one is kind of a surprising one when we look at the map, but it's got a little bit less of a native range. But this one has been cloned like crazy. There are so many cultivars of purple coneflower, but the straight species is going to be the best for our pollinators and our birds.
I also noticed there was a lot of yellow for this plant, so that means those are places where it was once native, but it's now disappeared. And again, when we talk about this, you know, when it's now disappeared from the landscape, bear in mind again, all of these plants are rare. You know, you don't find most of them. You know, unfortunately, most of our natural areas are largely invasive species, so they're you know, they're all rare. But in some places, like where the yellow is, I mean, like, you just virtually don't find them anywhere anymore, and they used to be there in abundance.
Which is why we're going to do another video about where to find native plants, because I think a lot of people are struggling with this and even growing your own native plants. So more to come on content for that. We will be working on that.
And you know what? That's a good point, Lexi. You know, when you watch this video, again, if you are in an area that has a lot of deer, please put in the chat some ideas of plants that in your experience they have stayed away from, more likely, maybe not 100%, but much less likely to devour. And also, always, you know, anybody watching these videos, please, if there's any topics that are really of interest to you that you'd really like to see us cover, please put that in the chat too. We'd love to hear from you.
Actually, we do have one question. Do you have a list of plants of native plants that deer do like? And we went over this at the top of the video, but just a short list. There's only a few that we've got for sure for native plants. So trillium, phlox, wild ginger, and mayapple. At least those are to our area, and we're in the Midwest. So in other areas, there might be other native plants, but then also our trees and our shrubs. So that's why it's so important to plant native shrubs and trees, because they do support huge amount of biodiversity. So serviceberry, that's another really important one, and dogwood, that would be another great one if you're looking to feed the deer on the flip side.
I love that. Now we're getting people question, I want to feed the deer. What can I give them? That'd be something I'd be saying.
Yeah, we had the same question on the rabbits one too. How can I feed the rabbits? So thank you for your empathy. We feel the same way. So, but we also want beautiful gardens, right? So
I mean, we want to feed the pollinators, and if the rabbits or the deer eat it first, and the pollinators didn't get it, it's just a real conundrum, right?
It is. More plants. That's all we need.
The truth is, if enough people had enough plants, I mean, if we have a thriving garden, we are the hot spot in the neighborhood. And so everybody is coming. The pollinators are coming, the butterflies are coming, the birds are coming, the rabbits are coming, the deer are coming, because the only thing they're finding anywhere else on the block is lawn, which is not giving them anything. So in an ideal world, which we're striving for, where everybody had an abundance of, you know, ecosystem friendly plants, if there was enough abundance, there would be plenty for everybody.
Well, that's a great point too, Kathy, because a lot of people are just letting their lawns go with a clover, and that's a great food source for deer and for rabbits too. So if you don't mind having that patch of clover, let it go, because that is a huge food source, and it's also good for our pollinators too. And
you made that point earlier, and that's really true. Clover is absolutely loved by rabbits. So if you have a good amount of clover in your lawn, which clover is really, a pretty nice plant to have in your lawn. It doesn't get brown. When lawn gets brown, it's nitrogen fixing, so it actually pulls nitrogen and improves your soil. But yeah, I mean, they will gravitate towards that clover and leave some of your other plants alone. So the next one is rose milkweed. We talked about another milkweed before, but here's rose milkweed, Asclepias incarnata. Again, wonderful for our monarch butterflies. one of the best, one of the favored species, in my experience, of monarchs to lay their eggs and for their caterpillars to feed. This likes moist to wet soil, but I don't want you to feel hesitant to plant it in just average soil. You may not want to plant it in a super dry, hard location right along cement or something, but this can take average soil. Don't think you have to plant it in a you know, a wet or swampy area. Likes full to part sun, blooms June, July, and August, and gets 3 to 5 feet tall. Swamp milkweed is, or rose milkweed is native to the eastern, upper Midwest, and the central US. So there we go. And this one, interesting. I didn't know that this was also, I mean, we think of it with our amazing monarchs, and I know that the queen butterfly likes, you know, some of the same plants that the monarch likes. But I did not know that there was a moth that this was a host plant for. So that's really interesting. The white tussock moth.
Okay, this is one of my favorites, Black-eyed Susan. This one the deer should avoid, 1 to 3 feet tall. You know, these leaves actually do kind of have a hairy texture to them, so I'm wondering if that's what makes them not so palatable to the deer. They can, once they get more mature, they can get a little bit spikier and not so soft. Full to part sun for Black-eyed Susan, moist to dry soil. This is not a picky plant at all, and it blooms forever, June, July, August through September. Is hardy in zones 3 to 9, and this is native to the eastern and the central US, and is just great for that huge pop of color in your garden. You just cannot go wrong with Black-eyed Susan.
Black-eyed Susan is like a ray of sunshine in the garden.
It sure is.
Ignore that. That was the wrong arrow.
There we go. There's our map. So really huge native range and, you know, most of the eastern and central US. And this picture is showing the goldfinch eating the seeds once the flowers are kind of starting to die back, but the seeds are a huge source of food for the birds. So multiple functions for this plant.
And wild bergamot, Monarda fistulosa. Again, in the mint family. So this is another one that the leaves have a fragrance of mint. And again, highly fragrant or mint plants in the mint family are not favored by our rabbits and are not favored by deer. Monarda fistulosa grows to be 4 feet tall in full to part sun, moist to dry soil. Blooms July, August, September. When we say pollinator magnet, that is like a complete understatement. When this is in bloom, everybody is at this. This is just whether it's the hummingbirds or the bees, everybody, or the clear-wing hummingbird moth that we're looking at in this photo. That is actually a daytime moth that looks like a cross between a hummingbird and a moth. It really is. They just love this plant. It's hardy in zones 3 to 9. Native to the eastern, central, and southwestern US.
This plant has such a good smell. There's just nothing like it. It's maybe kind of like a citrusy oregano, but you walk by and you're like, oh, that smell is just so fresh and like beautiful.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. It's very, very fresh smell, just like fresh nature. Yes.
But the deer don't like that.
Again, they don't like the smell. So host plant to the raspberry pyrosta butterfly and the hermit sphinx moth. Big native range.
All right, so wild columbine, this is a woodland plant, but it also likes full sun to full shade. It grows 1 to 3 feet tall. This is a spring bloomer, so blooming in May and June. It's very attractive to hummingbirds and pollinators. Hummingbirds love this red color. It's also a larval host plant, and it's very adaptable to different soil and sun conditions. One of the few native red plants in the Midwest, and this is hardy in zones 3 to 8, native to the eastern and the central US.
You know, when I was like looking some, you know, doing some research for this, I was wondering, I was kind of surprised to see wild columbine on this list because I was trying to think what would it be about wild columbine that they wouldn't like, because it seems to have pretty smooth foliage. It doesn't seem to be real leathery. It seems soft. I just wonder what feature of that plant they deters the deer.
Yeah.
Trying to think like a deer.
So this is native to the eastern and the central U.S.
Maybe
and
I'll do better at that than thinking like a human. Go
yeah.
ahead.
The columbine dusky wing is this is its larval host plant. So this is a beautiful. Is this a butterfly or a moth? I can't remember. The dusky wing.
I think those are butterflies.
The butterfly, just a dark color butterfly, but beautiful, beautiful butterfly.
A dramatic butterfly.
Yeah, kind of like a swallowtail, super dramatic.
Yes.
Maybe the columbine is in favor because it's kind of like these ferns, you know? The foliage looks kind of similar.
Maybe. So yeah, so we have here, we've talked about the cinnamon fern earlier, but now we have the maidenhair fern. So my hunch is if we did, went further into this and had, wanted to talk about this for 10 hours, it seems like maybe ferns in general. Maybe that's a stretch, but I'm thinking maybe ferns in general are not their favorite. Adiantum pedatum. Maidenhair fern. We've all seen maidenhair ferns. A lot of times you'll see them sold in hanging planters and so on in garden centers. It will get 1 to 2 feet tall, medium to moist soil. This fern likes full shade. Blooms June, July, August. It spreads by rhizomes. And it is native in zones 3 to 8, and hardy in zones 3 to 8, native to the Midwest and the eastern U.S. So here we can see the native range of maidenhair fern, not a favorite of deer.
All right, so New England aster. This is a keystone plant in our area, which means that it supports a multitude of different species. If you don't want it to get up to 5 feet tall, which it can, you can do the Chelsea chop. In June, chop it down to half size to make it a shorter, bushier plant. It does well in full to part sun, medium to wet soil, and this is going to bloom very late August through October. And it does not tolerate super dry conditions well, then it could become leggy and flop over. It actually does better with some tall competition. This is hardy in zones 3 to 8 and native to the Midwest and eastern U.S.
I find that my New England asters, when it's easier, that says it's better with tall competition. My New England asters do really well planted up against Joe Pye.
Interesting, which that can get up to 6 feet tall. I have some right now that's gotten to 6 feet tall. All right, and here's our map, and New England aster is also a larval host plant for these beautiful butterflies and the wavy-lined emerald moths. So we've got the pearl crescent and the gorgone checker spot, which I don't know how you could tell these apart very easily in your garden. Maybe it's just the white accents on the pearl crescent versus the gorgone, but both gorgeous, gorgeous butterflies and this beautiful emerald green moth. So, and not to mention the New England aster is great for end of season, the monarchs flying and making their migration.
Okay, nodding onion, again in the onion family, Allium cernum. Grows 1 to 2 feet tall, likes full to part sun, medium to moist soil, blooms July and August. Mine are blooming beautiful right now. Hardy in zones 3 to 8. Deer and rabbit don't prefer plants in the onion family. So I'm assuming they would not like your daffodils too much either. This is native to the central U.S. and truly the pollinators really do love it. They're all over it right now. So this is kind of an unusual name, a little bit of a strange map here, right? I'm trying to get a feel for this map. What's going on here, Lexi? Let's see.
Yeah, the pink is actually, these counties have named it a noxious plant, which, in the past, some counties have named milkweed as a noxious plant. So I'm not quite sure why there's so much pink and why so many areas will call it noxious, but it is definitely native to many regions, especially ours, and then also out west. So it's a beautiful plant. It's just blooming right now. And it's really nice to see those flowers that just kind
That's
of
very weird because I've
pop in
not,
there.
I have a plant. I've not known it to spread or do anything crazy, so I don't know why that would be the situation in some of these states.
Yeah.
Lavender hyssop, oh no, I'm sorry, this is yours.
Oh,
Give
this
this
is my,
one a
oh,
big, give this one a big sell because woo, there's nothing bad about this plant.
nothing bad at all. I mean, this one is so cool. And we just have, we had some comments too, that this one for sure, for people who have had issues with deer, that this is the plant that they plant, and they plant it around other plants that the deer might be attracted to. So this one has probably got one of the more intense smells, this and the wild bergamot. If you rub these leaves, it's going to smell like licorice. So again, it's in the mint family. It also will repel rabbits and rodents. And this one grows to 3 feet tall, full to part sun, medium soil. I think it kind of likes it on the drier side. Blooms June, July, August, and September. It's very long blooming. The bees absolutely love it too. And that's also a favorite of hummingbirds. And then after it's done blooming, the seeds are going to be harvested by the birds. So this is hardy in zones 3 to 6, and it's only native to parts of the upper Midwest. So we'll take a look at our map.
So I just want to say, please forgive me if you've already heard me gush about this plant in a previous video, but as you know, we've had people attest to the fact that this truly is resistant to deer. This is the native plant that got me into native plants because I picked it up a number of years ago somewhere. Somehow I got the native plant in a regular garden center. I planted a few of them in the garden. I was blown away by how beautiful smelling or fragrant the leaves were when you rub them. I was blown away by how long it bloomed. This thing just blooms and blooms and blooms. And I was amazed at all of the pollinators that came to it. And then and the hummingbirds, and then I was amazed at all the goldfinch that came and ate off of it. And I remember back then, and this was before I knew anything about native plants, I said, wow, this plant really services so many creatures. And then I started understanding and realizing more about the whole concept of native versus non-native and, our, native species, preferring the native plants. And this was the one that really showed me. So then it all clicked. So this is just an amazing, this just gives you so much in your landscape.
But just a tiny native range. I think this one's a little shocking that it's just parts of the upper Midwest, but it has been introduced to other states. That's what that darker green means. And then the yellow means that it's very rare, but is native to those counties. So a little bit more of a limited range on this one.
Very much. And it's such a great plant. I'm just so surprised it's not more widespread.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to grow here. But yet obviously, like I said, we're pretty far south for it. We're in the Chicago area, and we never think of ourselves as being far south, but these hyssop think we are.
Yeah.
So remember, now we're trying to prevent. Last week we did rabbits, this week it's deer, and we want to help our pollinators, we want to help our monarchs, we want to help our birds, and so we don't want all of our plants to be eaten by deer, obviously, or rabbits. But do remember that herbivores aren't all bad and have a significant place in our ecosystem. They really do. In fact, in a study done according to the World Economic Forum, in a new study, an international team of researchers used global satellite data to map the tree cover of Earth's protected areas. They found that regions with an abundance of large herbivores in many different settings have a greater variety of tree cover, which is expected to be beneficial to overall biodiversity. So again, these herbivores are very important at controlling certain plants from taking over, spreading seeds. So they really are important to our ecosystem. We realize we don't want them to eat our whole garden, but they're not really the bad they're not all bad. They really do have their place, and we do need them too.
All right, and with that, we thank you for watching tonight. We did have a couple of comments. Thank you, Metacyclic, for posting. They say that purple coneflower has been browsed by deer, could be lack of alternatives. And also a question is, short black-eyed Susan, short-lived? It is a biennial, right? So it reseeds itself, but it definitely is it's a short-lived perennial. But once you plant it, I think it just kind of reseeds and keeps coming back. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it is a short-lived, like it doesn't come back, like the stalk or the plant that you're seeing this year is not going to come back next year, but it seeds itself really well. So if you plant a clump of it, you're never going to know the difference. I mean, I have clumps of it, and those clumps are there every year, and so you're not really going to notice a difference. If you plant it, you're going to have it next year.
Yeah, and just really interesting from these comments too about the lavender hyssop and the wild bergamot. But if you want to try to use those plants to protect something else that deer might be more susceptible to going after, and you want to try to prevent them from eating it, might be something to try. So hopefully
Like
you've
a
enjoyed
good
this
block.
presentation. Yeah.
Because like those plants are so fragrant so that I could really see them deterring the deer, not just from the plant, but from the area, because they're so highly fragrant.
Exactly, yeah. So if that fragrance overwhelms them, they might not go for something else. So
Right. They're just going to say, no, I'm going to pass on to your neighbor's house.
right, exactly. All right, well, that is our presentation for this evening, and we thank you so much for joining us. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.